Hello YouTubies! You've likely clicked this video to watch how to do an oil change on a Porsche 986, or you're one of my very supportive friends and family. Hello Mum. There's a lot of talk online in the groups that I'm in for this car of people asking about indie mechanics or Porsche specialists doing an oil change for them. It has to be one of the easiest DIY jobs to do. So making this video to help people assess if they want to do it, how to do it, even if they're not mechanically inclined, with a view to then decide, should I give it a go myself or not, and potentially save a few £100s or dollars, or depending where you are in the country. This is actually one of the easier cars I've owned to do an oil change on. That's particularly related to like the location and access for the oil filter. Big VW group fan prior to having one of these, and yeah, not as easy to get to, a bit more of a pain in the butt. So I'm going to walk you through what you need, how to do it, and you can work out from there if you want to or not. Enjoy. So what are you going to need? Oil up to 8 litres, oil catch pan capable of catching up to 8 litres, a jack to lift the car, or officially known as a lifty boy, a wrench and an oil filter removal tool, sockets or Allen keys depending on your drain plug, a new filter, an O-ring, a funnel, jack stands for safety, no squishums, new washer for the drain plug, and here's going to be what you want to use: gloves, an enormous piece of cardboard for catching drips so they go on the floor, coffee, and last but not least, super stimulating book for while you're waiting for the oil to drain out. So the first thing you need to do is jack up the car. You need to do this safely. There's a couple of options for the back of the 986. You have the jacking points located roughly underneath the air vent here, and you'll notice they have a little hole in them. You can get a particular foot to go on your jack in order to lift that. I tend to prefer lifting it from this area here, put a piece of wood here, that's what I'm going to do, and then I can put the axle stand on the jacking point for safety. Car lifted and secure in 3, 2, 1, magic. Now, coming under the car from the back, I'm on the passenger side in the UK. This is what we're looking at, and this is the key bits we'll need. This is the oil filter housing, and this is the drain bolt. What I'm going to do now is just set up the oil pan to catch the oil and undo both of those, removing that completely. It's like a little carrier, and let the oil, which I've let the car warm up a bit, let the oil just drain out. So like with most oil changes, you're going to want to try and apply, I've broken this nut now, you're going to want to try and apply pressure upwards as you're pulling it out so you don't get covered in oil. Never ever seen anyone do it super cleanly. Let's see what happens. Also going to be doing this one-handed. I've deliberately left the filler cap on for now just to slow how much is gonna come out, and once I've done this I will go and open it from the top. Famous last words, but so far so good. Not bad. Maybe not. I'll just let that run out. Wouldn't advise this as a DIY job if you intend to not make a mess, but that's what the enormous piece of cardboard should have been for, which I've now put down. Only kidding, but I will get a proper piece. Once the drain plug underneath has been removed, go ahead and remove the oil filler at the top. This will just let air displace in from the top and help remove the oil that's a bit more stubborn. It will create eventually a sort of a vacuum, just means you're going to get more of the old oil out. Then go ahead, get the oil filter removal tool on a wrench or a ratchet, whatever you want to call it. Pull it like that, break it loose. This is not going to be tremendously tight ever, mine's a bit weepy, didn't do it enough last time, and after a while you should be able to go and just remove that by hand. Testament to how not tight these are once you've sort of undone it with the ratchet, even covered in oil and grime and UK road mess, you can just pull it out by hand. I always find it's worth waiting a few minutes to let the oil drain a bit before doing this, because it will minimise how much falls out. I need to start actually saying what's happening after it's happened rather than trying to predict it. And now just let it all drain out. While you're waiting for the oil to drain, there's a couple of bits that you can do. Now, the oil draining can take anywhere slightly north of half an hour, which is why I recommend Stimulating Book. Not managed to finish mine just yet though, but it's been a wild ride so far. Thank you, Mega Plane. This is I've cleaned up some pieces. This is the oil filter housing. Now, there is an O-ring on this that you do want to replace, and if you look here, you won't be able to maybe see it. There's a very small divot in the screw that you can then just hook out the old one, and he says you then move it around the top of the filter to replace with the new one. It's obviously very oily and very slippery. Just unseat it, and you should be able to just take it up the top. Here's one I didn't make earlier. I'm going to replace it with the new one. Make sure it goes and seats right back in the same position, otherwise you'll end up having what I did, where you had a bit of a weepy weepy oil filter. So that's ready to go back on. This is the old washer from the sump plug, or the oil drain plug, whatever you want to call it, sump nut. Replace that with a new one, as so. This is an aftermarket oil plug. This one's got a small magnet in it just to pick up any pieces of metal that might be floating around, indicate anything that's getting a bit old. Good idea on an old engine, particularly an older car. And this is, for me, I agree with the logic of it. You know, if it's telling me, if I'm doing an oil change and there's pieces of metal on there, that potentially suggests something is wearing that I need to be aware of. And it's also really cool and blue. So new washer on. Once it's finished draining, this one's going to go back in. That's going to go back together in a reverse, before we then go to look at putting any oil in the car. So installation is just a reverse of removal. New filters in the housing, new ring up, sealed tight, tightened with the ratchet, and the drain plug back in. I've given everything a clean up underneath, just so you can always go and check and see if there's any new leaks once you're done, because you always want to be safe. And for this part, you are done under the car, so proceed to lower it back down and we'll get to filling. We've now moved to the boot. We have already removed the oil filler cap, which goes on here. There's that guy in there, which I think is something to do with like air release or evaporation. That's awfully distracting. I'm going to use the dipstick to be measuring how much oil is needed and going in. I used a 10-litre oil drain pan. I reckon there's about 8 in there. It looks about 80% full, but to be sure, clean off the dipstick. You've got 2 little notches. Let's just check that on the camera. 2 little notches on there that indicate between sort of your minimum, maximum amount. Stick that right down in there, pull it back out, and we have nothing. So we're going to start proceeding to fill it. Now, the only downside of doing this with this car is, unlike a regular car with the engine's at the front, if you spill the oil, you're getting it on your carpet, you're getting it in there, you're not just dripping it in an engine bay where eventually it will be leaking off. So I prefer to use one of these. And I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get away with putting it in and filling it at the same time whilst filming. So I'm going to be holding it something like this and then pouring the oil in. I'm currently 5 litres in, which is 1 big bottle of oil. I know I'm going to need to put between another 2 and 3 in from the other bottle. What I'm just doing is giving it a minute to sit. You will see I've put a towel down just in case I do drip it. Then just use the dipstick just to show it's starting to register. Nothing yet, so it hasn't had time to go down, so just give it a couple more minutes and we'll start incrementally adding the rest. It's better to add too little than too much. Too much is very hard to get some out. Too little is very easy to top up. So take it slowly, measure what you're doing as you go, and you can't really get that wrong. Now, I may have trouble getting this to focus, but I've put 7 litres in. Oh, nearly there. And it's coming up to where I've left it to sit for about 5-10 minutes. It's coming up to almost at the full mark, which for me is probably about right. You're not going to get the focus. You might be able to just see the shine on it where it's actually got the oil and where it hasn't. I'm going to leave it for another couple of hours, just come and check it again and check it doesn't need a top up. But fundamentally, kind of done. We'll stick the engine oil filler cap back on and the oil change has been completed. Hopefully that's been useful and interesting enough to give you the confidence to potentially have a go at doing this yourself, or make you more comfortable about doing it if you were not particularly fully comfortable before. I'd love to hear if somebody's now watched this and thinks, great, yeah, I'm going to go give it a go. It doesn't look that difficult. Put it in the comments, let us hear. That'd be nice. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, like, comment, share, all of that stuff, you know, the usual. And join us for the next one. Cheers!